I was out there alone, tightening a new stretch of fence, when I heard that high electric whine behind me, the sound of HOA golf carts on patrol. And I remember thinking, please let them be going past, not stopping here. They didn't. 3 carts rolled right up to my property line, the first one close enough to dust my boots, and this woman in a blazer and sunglasses stepped out, waving a stack of papers like a badge as she pointed at the post driver in my hands and shouted, "Stop that! Work right now! Mr. Turner, you're building on HOA common area. That land is not yours." I was standing on the same strip of dirt my dad died taking care of with survey stakes, set exactly where the county map said my line was. And all I could think was, you have got to be kidding me. I literally have the deed sitting in my truck. My name is Jake Turner, and I didn't come back here to fight a homeowners association. I came back because life in the city had chewed me up, and the only thing that still felt like mine was 10 rough acres on the edge of Copper Ridge and a crooked little cabin my dad built. 5 years earlier, he had a heart attack while fixing the fence. That's the phrase everyone uses out on the southern boundary with a pair of pliers in his hand. And after the funeral, I sprinted into big engineering jobs and tried not to think about fences or hospitals or anything that looked permanent. Burnout has a way of catching up, though, and one day I looked around my concrete apartment and realized the only thing I owned that meant anything was the same fence line my dad had given his last breath to keep straight. Copper Ridge in the brochure is that perfect place with the stone entry sign and the matching mailboxes and the lake that's always blue. You know, the type the word covenant shows up more than the word neighbor. I met the HOA before I met a single person. When I opened the cabin door, there was a stack of envelopes on the floor, all with the same logo. One fined me because the grass in the roadside ditch was above acceptable height. One told me my dad's old pickup was an unapproved vehicle that had to disappear. One called the fence unsafe and a visual detriment. And every single one mentioned liens and legal action, like it was just another bullet point. I called the number at the bottom, hoping there was a human reset button, and that's how I met Brenda Whitmore, HOA president, over the phone. I told her I'd just moved back, that I'd get things cleaned up. I just needed a little time. She didn't soften. "The rules apply from day one, Mr. Turner," she said in that smooth, cold tone. "Your property has been in violation for some time. The association has already shown considerable patience. If you have concerns, you're welcome to address the board." Translation: come get scolded in public. I hung up and opened the fridge out of habit, and there on the door was an old sticky note in my dad's handwriting that said, "Fence before friends." Back when he wrote it, I thought it was a joke. Standing there with 3 violation letters on the table, it felt like a warning he knew I'd need. My dad was serious about boundaries. He'd walk that fence with a mug of coffee and mutter, "Land doesn't argue with you." Jake, people do so mark the land right before the people show up. As a kid, I rolled my eyes. As a middle-aged man in a subdivision with a rule book thicker than a phone book, I heard him differently. The fence was rough. I'll give Brenda that. Posts leaning wire tired. But I wasn't about to move it inward just because someone in a blazer told me to. I pulled the county plat map, loaded the GPS app on my phone, and walked the southern edge step by step until I found the rusted steel pins my dad had driven into the ground years ago. They lined up perfectly with the map. Our line was exactly where he said it was. So I started setting new posts right along that line, every hit of the post driver. This little promise to him that I'd finish what he started, and that's the moment the golf carts pulled up and Brenda came out with that stop work order. She pointed at the strip and said, "This is Copper Ridge Common Greenbelt and utility access. It has never been your private yard. Your father appears to have misunderstood the development plat." That word misunderstood lit me up. I held up my phone and said, "The county says this is my line. My deed says this is my line. Those steel pins say this is my line. If you've got anything that outranks all of that, I'd love to see it." She didn't even glance down. "You have 7 days to remove these illegal structures," she said. "After that, the association will remove them and bill you. Fines will accrue daily. It's all in your covenants." Then she turned, climbed back into the golf cart, and rolled away like the matter was settled. After that, the pressure picked up. More letters, higher numbers, $250, then unauthorized construction continuing violation. A notice that my access card for the pool and gym was disabled pending compliance. Someone in the unofficial neighborhood Facebook group posted a zoomed-in photo of my half-finished fence with the caption, "Some people think the rules don't apply to them," and suddenly folks who'd never bothered to say hello had very strong opinions about me. Walking my dog past those perfect lawns, I could feel conversations pause. One neighbor, arms crossed, actually told me, "We all had to follow the rules when we moved in. You're not special." Like I'd asked for a parade instead of a fair hearing. I tried the polite route one more time, went to the HOA office, asked to see whatever plat they were using to say that strip was common area. The receptionist didn't look up from her screen as she said, "Those are internal board documents," slid me a form, and told me I could expect a response within 30 days. Meanwhile, Brenda had given me 7 to tear my fence out. That's when it stopped feeling like confusion and started feeling like a strategy. In the back of my mind, I could hear my dad again. Paper beats muscle. The man with the best file wins. So I grabbed my stack of letters and the county map and drove to his old attorney Oliver Hart, the guy who'd drafted his will. Same cramped office over Main Street. Same coffee that tasted like it had been on the burner since the Bush administration. Oliver flipped through everything and finally said, "Your dad mentioned a boundary fight when this subdivision went in. The developer wanted a strip along the back of his place. He refused to sell. Then one day, he brought me some documents, told me it was handled, but he didn't want them in the regular file. Said if anyone tried to move that fence again, you'd find what you needed at the cabin." Oliver pulled a thin folder labeled Turner, Special. Inside was a short note from my father, Jake. If they're trying to move the line, check the box in the bedroom closet. Do not hand it to the HOA. That was it. No explanation. Just instructions. I drove back to the cabin with that note burning a hole in my pocket, went to the closet, and sure enough, there was an old plastic storage box tucked behind a stack of boots. At the kitchen table, I opened a worn envelope and found a signed agreement between my dad and Summit West Development. The builder that carved Copper Ridge out of pasture. In clear legal language, it said that 15-foot strip along my southern boundary had been mistakenly shown as part of an access easement on an early plat. That Summit West acknowledged it belonged to the Turner parcel, and that ownership would remain with the Turners in perpetuity unless someone in our family signed it away. My dad had highlighted in perpetuity twice. Behind the agreement was a letter in his blocky handwriting. If you're reading this, it means somebody decided my fence is in their way again. The line is ours. You're smarter than me. Use that. Don't let them make you feel crazy. For years, people had told the story like he was just a grumpy old man with a thing about fences. Sitting there with that agreement in my hands, I realized he'd been quietly protecting a promise the whole time. That same evening, just when I was trying to decide what to do next, there was a soft knock at the door. Not Brenda's sunrise pounding, just a hesitant tap. It was Lisa from down the street, the one with the kids and the golden retriever that hates my truck. She stepped inside, looked over her shoulder like she expected someone to be watching, and set a little flash drive on the table. I used to be on the board. She said I quit last year. Before I left, I copied some emails. I didn't know what to do with them until I saw what they were doing to you. On that drive was an email chain titled Turner Parcel Strategy. Brenda and someone from the developer's new company were talking about how problematic my dad had been, how the son might be easier to pressure, and how if they documented enough little violations, they could paint me as a problem owner and push legal action to clear that strip for a wider road. Reading that line about me being easier to pressure made me laugh in that bitter way, where you're not sure if you're about to crack up or break something. Yeah, that happened. When I took the agreement and the emails back to Oliver, he didn't even hesitate. "You're done playing nice," he said. "You need a litigator who likes this kind of mess." That's how I met Dana Cole. She sat in Oliver's office, read through the file, looked up at me and said, "So your dad nailed this down legally. The developer wants it back, the HOA president is running their place, and they think you're going to roll over because they threw some fines at you. You know what I mean?" When I say they picked the wrong engineer, right? I just nodded. Her first move was to get a temporary order so the HOA couldn't touch my fence until ownership was clarified. Her second was a demand letter to the HOA and the developer with copies of the agreement and the email chain. Her third was circling the date of the next open board meeting. "They've been hiding behind the rules and closed doors," she said. "We're going to put this in front of every homeowner they claim to be protecting." By the time that meeting rolled around, word had spread. The clubhouse was packed, chairs full, people standing in the back, everybody suddenly very interested in what was happening at the weird fence guy's property. I sat in the second row between Oliver and Dana, feeling every heartbeat, while Brenda and the board sat behind a long table with little nameplates like a tiny city council. She opened with a slideshow photos of my half-finished fence text about encroachment on common area and threats to property values. When she paused, Dana stood up and said, "Under your own bylaws, my client is entitled to equal time to present his evidence, unless transparency has somehow fallen off the list of values." A few people laughed. Brenda didn't have much choice but to agree. Dana took the projector remote and put up the county plat map, big and clear. She traced my lot line with her finger and said, "This is the official boundary on file with the county, and it matches exactly where Mr. Turner's fence posts are. Not an internal sketch, not a marketing brochure. The map that actually matters." Next slide. The agreement between my dad and Summit West zoomed in on the sentence about that strip remaining privately owned in perpetuity. She read it out loud. Then she clicked to a screenshot from the email chain. The part where Brenda calls my dad a nightmare, calls me easier to pressure, and lays out the plan to build a case for legal remedies so the strip can become a wider road. The room went very quiet. Lisa stood up and, voice shaking, told everyone she'd been on the board when those emails were written, that she'd resigned because it felt wrong, and that this was never about grass or aesthetics. It was about taking a neighbor's land because it was convenient. An older neighbor in the front, one of the first people to buy in Copper Ridge, got to his feet and said, "I walked that fence with Hank back when this was just dirt and stakes. It's been in the same place longer than most of us have lived here. If somebody is confused about the line, it isn't him." People actually clapped. After that, the questions started. Were their dues paying for this fight? Why hadn't the old agreement been disclosed? Why didn't the HOA's plat match the county's? Someone in the back said, "If they can do it to him, they can do it to any of us." And you could feel the whole room slide onto one side of the line. Folks pulled out their phones, looked up the bylaws, realized they could recall a board president with enough signatures right there. Clipboards appeared. Pens started moving. Dinah leaned over and whispered, "That's the part you can't get from a judge. That's your neighbors waking up." When the association's attorney finally announced that they had enough signatures to recall Brenda as president, you could see it hit her. The new interim president, Marcus, a quiet guy who usually just talked about tree trimming, cleared his throat and said his first act was suspending all enforcement against my fence and hiring an independent surveyor to realign HOA records with the county. And his second was opening a review of past dealings with the developer. Then he picked up the gavel from in front of Brenda and set it in the center of the table. She gathered her papers, gave me one flat look, and walked out without saying a word. No meltdown, just a quiet exit for someone who thought the rules only cut one way. Driving home that night past the same perfect lawns, I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt like something crooked had been nudged back towards straight. A couple of weeks later, the official HOA email went out to everyone. Halfway down between reminders about trash cans and holiday lights was one line that made every headache worth it. The southern boundary of Lot 27 has been confirmed by independent survey to match county records. The association recognizes this strip as privately owned by the Turner family. No apology, but I didn't need one. That one sentence was my dad's sticky note in legal form. The developer has been quiet since. Maybe one day they'll show up with a big check and a sales pitch about unlocking the value of that strip. Some evenings when I'm walking the fence with my dog and the sun's dropping behind the ridge, I think about that. I think about whether holding this line makes me principled or just stubborn. I think about my dad, this man. People called difficult because he wouldn't work with the right folks, and how different the story looks once you see the paper he kept in a box. So now I'm curious what you think. If you were in my shoes, would you have fought this hard over 15 feet of ground? Or would you have moved the fence and bought yourself some peace? Do you think I was right to dig in? Or was I just another stubborn guy with a chip on his shoulder? And have you ever watched people in power use the rules to push around the one person they thought wouldn't fight back? Tell me in the comments what side you'd be on. Share your own HOA or neighborhood stories. Agree with me. Disagree with me. I can take it. And if you want more stories where regular folks decide they're done being pushed around, hit subscribe and stick around. Because this little strip of land was just the beginning.